Good afternoon, everyone. So, Virgo, there are endings and then there are endings. The ordinary kind, where two people drift apart or decide they are better moving in different directions, or simply fade from each other's lives in the gradual and undramatic way that many connections end without a specific moment of finality or a specific last thing said. That stands as the final word between two people on everything that was between them. And then there are the other kind, the kind where someone, before they leave your life completely, before their presence in it, closes entirely and permanently, leaves something behind, something specific, something they needed to say before the leaving became complete, because the leaving without saying it was not something they could do and remain at peace with what they were leaving and how they were leaving it. This is the other kind. Welcome, and let me tell you everything. Before mid-May 2026 brings you the everything directly from the person who is preparing to leave and has something to say first. Someone is leaving your life in the complete and permanent sense. I want to say that clearly and without softening, because I think you deserve the clarity of knowing what this is before it arrives, rather than discovering it in the particular disorientation of something that becomes clear only in retrospect. When you realize that the conversation you just had was the last real one, and that something closed without you fully knowing in the moment it was closing, that was what was happening. In mid-May 2026, this is what is happening. Someone is moving to a permanent distance from the place they have occupied in your life and your energy and your daily awareness for however long they have been there. And before they arrive at that permanent distance, they are going to say something to you that they have been holding for a long time, because the holding of it was possible while their presence in your life was ongoing and becomes impossible in the face of the permanent distance, because some things cannot leave with the person who is holding them without being said first to the person they were always meant for. I want to tell you who this person is, not by name, but by the quality of their presence in your life and by what they have been holding that they are now preparing to leave behind in the form of what they are going to say before they go. This is someone who has known you in the specific and accumulated way that only comes from time, real time, over enough of it that the knowing is deep and layered, and not the surface knowing that most people in most contexts have of each other, but the kind that includes the versions of you that existed before now and that saw you become what you are now from something different, and was present for the becoming, even when the becoming was difficult and the person doing the becoming did not always know what they were becoming or whether what they were becoming was something worth becoming. This person has seen you over time, and what they have seen over that time has produced something in them that they have not fully said, or not said in the complete form, that it deserved to be said in, while the ordinary rhythm of daily presence made the saying feel not urgent or not quite the right moment, or simply something that could be said another time when the moment was more right than the current moment happened to be. The leaving changes the calculation completely because another time is no longer available, and what was held for the right moment must now be said in this moment, which has become, by virtue of being the last one, the right moment. By definition, I want to tell you what they are going to say in the substance of it, because I think knowing in advance the general shape of what is coming will help you receive it in the fullest possible form, rather than in the stunned and partial form of someone who was not expecting the weight of what just arrived and who processed it from behind the protective distance of surprise rather than from the full presence that what is being given deserves to be received with. They are going to tell you something about who you are, as seen through the particular clarity of someone who has watched you over time and who knows the full version, not the current chapter version, but the entire arc of everything you have been and everything you have become in the time they have been present for the becoming. What they see in you when they look at the full arc is something that you have perhaps not seen as clearly as they have, because you were inside the arc, living it chapter by chapter, without the perspective that standing outside it provides. And they are going to give you that perspective before they go, in the form of what the full arc looks like. From the outside, to someone who has been watching with the particular care and attention of someone who truly sees you. They are also going to tell you something about themselves, about what knowing you has meant, in the full dimension of what meant can mean, between two people who have been in each other's lives for long enough to have mattered to each other in ways that were not always visible in the ordinary texture of how they showed up in each other's daily lives, but that are real and lasting and will remain after the physical presence in each other's lives has moved to the permanent distance, that the leaving produces. What knowing you has meant to them is more than you know, in the form that it has been expressed in the ordinary rhythm of your shared time. The full form of it has not been said yet and is about to be, because the leaving makes the not saying no longer possible. For someone who actually means what they feel and feels it fully about the person they are leaving behind. I want to pause here and say something about what it means to have been known by someone in the specific and accumulated way that this person has known you Most people in a life know us in the current chapter version. They encounter who we are now without the context of who we were becoming before now, without the witness of the difficult seasons that produced the version they're encountering, and without the particular care of someone who watched the becoming from close enough to understand what the becoming cost and what it produced and what it says about who you are in the deepest and most complete sense. To be known in that way by someone who is now leaving is one of the more significant gifts that life provides, and it is the specific gift that this person carries with them toward the leaving, and that they are choosing to give back to you in the form of what they are going to say before they go. They are giving you back the full knowledge of yourself as seen from the outside by someone who saw the whole arc and understood it and valued what it was in a way that you deserve to know. They valued before the permanent distance makes the knowing impossible to deliver in this form any longer going forward into the chapters of your life that they will not be present for in the same form they have been present. For the chapters that preceded this one, what they want for you in those future chapters is specific, not the general well-wishing of someone who hopes things go well for you in the vague and comfortable form of that hoping, but the specific and knowing desire of someone who knows what you most need to be fully yourself and fully happy and fully in the life that was always meant for you, rather than the constrained version that various circumstances and seasons have produced at different points in your story. They know what you most need because they have been watching long enough and carefully enough to see what the circumstances and seasons that produced the constrained version were constraining, and they are going to name it before they go as the last gift they give you from the position of someone who has known you in the full and complete way that only time provides. I want to speak now about the experience of receiving this, because I think you need to be prepared for what it will feel like to receive something this complete from someone in the context of their leaving, because the context changes how everything feels, including the receiving of things that would feel meaningful in any context, but that feel particularly weighted in the context of a leaving, and everything that leaving implies. The receiving will feel like loss and gift simultaneously, not sequentially, not the loss first, and then the gift as comfort, but both at the same moment, in the particular and specific way that things can be fully both things at once, when the circumstances that produce them are the same circumstances and cannot be separated from each other. The loss of the person and the gift of what they leave behind in the form of what they are going to say are the same thing, experienced simultaneously by the person receiving both at the same moment. Uh, I want to say something about the grief before I say anything else about the receiving, because the grief deserves its own acknowledgement before we arrive at anything that might accidentally function as a reason to experience it less fully than it deserves. The grief of losing someone who has known you fully is one of the specific and significant griefs that life offers, not because the loss of their physical presence is the largest component of the grief, though that is real too, but because what is lost when someone who knew you fully is no longer present in your life, in the ongoing form of their presence, is the particular mirror of their knowing that was available to you in the accumulated form of a long and full attention directed at who you are. That mirror is what leaves with them when they go, and the absence of that specific mirror is part of what the grief is about, even when the grief is not always articulated in those terms, even when it presents primarily as the simpler loss of the person themselves and the presence they brought to the daily texture of your shared life. Let the grief be what it is in its full and specific form, without requiring it to be resolved or managed or justified or replaced by the comfort of the gift they leave before the grief has had its full time to be what it is, which is real and significant and proportionate to the size of what is being lost. At the same time, without requiring one to resolve before the other can be felt, or requiring the grief to be set aside so the gift can be received, or requiring the gift to compensate for the grief in a way that makes the grief feel smaller or less legitimate than it actually is. The grief is real and legitimate. Someone who has been in your life in the full and present way is leaving it, and that is a real thing to grieve. In the specific form of grief, that belongs to the loss of a presence. That was a genuine presence, rather than only a peripheral one. That would not leave a real gap in the texture of the life it was present in. The gift is also real. What they are going to say before they go is a genuine and complete and loving thing that deserves to be received as such in the full presence of someone who allows it to land without the grief intercepting it before it can fully arrive. I want to give you something practical now for when the conversation happens, because something this significant deserves something concrete to take into it, rather than only the emotional preparation of knowing what is coming. The first thing, listen fully, not the partial listening of someone who is already processing what is being said, while more is still being said. The full listening of someone who is simply receiving everything as it is being given before the processing begins, because the processing requires what was said to be complete to process the complete thing rather than only the parts that arrived before the processing interrupted the arrival of the rest. Listen to all of it. Before you respond to any of it, the second thing, say what you need to say in return, not as a performance of the appropriate response to what was given, but as the honest and real expression of what you feel in the moment of receiving what they have given you, which may be more than you expected to feel. When you started receiving it, because the full weight of what is being said often only becomes clear as it is arriving, rather than in advance of the arrival, when the full weight was not yet present. To be felt, whatever is true in you, when the giving is complete and you have listened fully to all of it, say that in whatever form the truth takes, in the moment you are in, with the specific person who has given you something precious before leaving. And the third thing, remember it in the specific and active sense of choosing to carry forward what was given, rather than allowing it to be absorbed into the grief of the leaving and become less distinct over time. As the grief settles into the ordinary and the specific words and the specific quality of the specific thing that was said fade from the immediacy of the experience into the general memory of a meaningful conversation, rather than remaining as specific and complete as it was when it was given. Carry it forward specifically in the exact form it was given, because what it was is worth preserving in the exact form rather than in the softened general form. That memory sometimes produces, when the specific is not actively maintained against the natural fading, that time produces in everything, including the things that deserve to be carried fully into all the chapters that come after the one in which they were received. Mid-May 2026 is when this conversation happens, or is happening, or has just happened, depending on where you are in the specific hours of this specific period. When you are receiving this message, whatever the timing, whatever is still coming or has already arrived, the substance of what I have described is real and is either about to be or has been said to you by someone who needed to say it before they moved to the permanent distance from which it could no longer be said, in the direct and present form that it is being given or has been given in mid-May 2026. They are going, and before they go, they are giving you something that they could only give from this position of leaving, because the leaving creates the conditions under which the holding back finally becomes less possible than the saying, receive it, in the full presence of someone who understands that what is being given was held for a long time and is being given now at the cost of the saying, in the context of the leaving, by someone who decided that leaving you without it was not something they could do, and remain at peace with what they were leaving and how they were leaving it. They chose to say it before going, and that choice tells you everything you need to know about what you have been to them. In all the time they were present in your life, receive it with the full presence of someone who has always deserved to hear exactly what is being given, and then carry it forward into every chapter that follows as the specific and complete thing it is. Because what they gave you before leaving was not small, and you are worth carrying it in its full and specific form for as long as it remains true, which is always.